Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Catering Cage. The lights are on, the crowd is roaring, and the industry's toughest questions are stepping into the ring. So strap in, because the bell is about to ring.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another exciting episode of the Catering Cage, where today we have the honor of having a very, very important gentleman join us today. His name is Mike Sudermann, and Mike and I have met in recent years, and I'm very excited to have him at the show. He's currently the CEO of Ascent Select, and I think the tagline he uses is the Moneyball of executive search. He's going to tell us a lot about that today. And since 2006, Mike and his team have placed over 300 executives, 350 executives actually, across all departments, things, food service, everything from finance, operations, supply chain, HR, marketing, sales. And Mike has a reputation. You know, what can I tell you? He's a disruptor. He's been delivering talent through rigorous yet swift process, combining flat rate pricing, creative compensation strategies, guaranteed cultural fit. And today we're going to be tackling one of the biggest challenges that we see inside catering as it relates to restaurants, and that's finding and keeping the right people. So joining us, Mike, welcome to the show. It's great to have you.
Thank you. Good to be here. Appreciate it, Erle. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a pleasure, and it's been wonderful to just catch up with you and chat about things. And I've always had this idea, as my journey, which has essentially been across food service tech, and had a school, and still do a lot of advisory work, and people recruitment is by far the most difficult part of any organization, I think. And it's no different for catering. So, tell us, Mike, what are you hearing out there? What are you seeing out there?
It's an extremely tough market across the board. It doesn't matter what level. You could be, you could be 20 years old, 18, 19, 20, looking for a role. You could be, in mid-stage career or the end of your career, doesn't matter. It's extremely difficult to find. First of all, it's hard for both parties. It's hard for the person looking for a position, and it's particularly difficult for companies to find the talent they are seeking. And particularly in the hospitality space is difficult for a variety of reasons, and we can get into that. But it's tricky. It's just a really tricky market. And the state of the economy right now does not help anybody.
So
that's the challenge.
Yeah. So what's different today than it was, let's say, pre-pandemic, or it was, is talent not available? People don't want to work. Like what is it?
It's a combination of things, Erle. It's specifically in hospitality. It is, finding really great talent in the hospitality industry is tricky for a variety of reasons. It is tricky because, we're looking for people who are reliable, have soft skills. They love what they do, because it's a very difficult, no matter what we do in the hospitality industry, it's challenging, right? You want to execute on the highest possible guest experience at all times, which means, reminds me of the Walt Disney principle, or opening night in a Broadway production. It might be the first time anybody has ever experienced that restaurant brand. It might be the first time, might be a special event, like a wedding or whatever the situation may be. And you need people who are guest service oriented. And we all know that, but they have to have that soft skill. They have to have specific skills for, whatever specific role they are carrying out for the catering event or for the restaurant brand across the board. But at the end of the day, it's you have to vet those people out, and we can talk about it if you want to, but there are specific traits we're looking for in those individuals that can execute at the level you expect them to. And for catering, for example, there are all types of different types of catering situations. and as the company owner, your brand, your business that you're operating is being represented by individuals that are executing on the event for you. So it's just tricky to find really, really good people who are going to execute.
Yeah.
It's just
It's interesting, Mike. I mean, I think, catering is this interesting thing because, especially in the context of restaurants, right? Because, as you know, multi-unit restaurant brands are primarily restaurants. That's what they're designed to do. And catering is this business that's, blossoming, growing for a lot of these brands. And many of the brands, they're all in different parts of the journey, right? Some are, well advanced, some are just beginning. Um, and I've been a proponent, as you may know, of leadership is actually the key. It's without a good catering leader, you actually can't lift the program. And so, sitting within the context of the brand itself is a strategy for catering, which fits under the off premises strategy. Okay, and I always felt that it's very short-changed. And I would love to open this to a conversation because I don't know the inquiries you're getting or the brands that are coming to you, what kind of positions they're looking to fill. I imagine, it might be a catering leader, maybe director level. I think catering salespeople probably, you're getting a lot of inquiry for that.
Yeah,
But,
we've done a lot of that.
Yeah. Salespeople is just a whole other animal, right? It's like, finding good catering salespeople. And these are people who are skilled in the business to business transactions in terms of going out and getting business. But I want to address something because I always feel like I meet brands and some of them are, approaching, 15, 16, 17, 18% of system sales are now catering. Those are the ones that are advanced. There are pockets of franchisees or stores that are doing like 30% catering, And so I've put forward this idea that I think the industry is ready for a chief catering officer, Mike. That's really the truth. And I think that, anybody who's listening to this podcast, if you're in the executive suite of these brands and you're looking at your catering program and it's stalled, what do you do next? And I have not seen yet one brand take the bold step of identifying a chief catering officer, somebody in the C-suite. And I'd love to explore that with you a little bit and talk about that because I actually think that's the next evolution that's going to take place within the sort of the people part of it. And what is involved from your perspective in identifying and recruiting for what would be the equivalent of a chief catering officer, somebody in the boardroom that's fighting for catering resources all day long? It's core to the strategy. It's as important and complementary as your CEO, CFO, COO. We now have a CCO, your chief catering officer. I'd love to hear from you. What your thoughts are on that, and how far ahead of the curve are we in that thinking?
Well, let's address the last piece of that question. How far are you ahead of the curve in that thinking? I think you're right on target. Uh, Brands need to, you're saying, that the higher level brands are doing upwards of 17% of their business in catering. They can do even more than that if they had a chief catering officer. But that's just like any senior leadership role that we would look for one of our clients. I mean, there are a lot of ways that we would go about identifying that person for an organization. But I will tell you right now, I mean, clients, senior leadership, when they're wanting to bring somebody on at that level to run all of their catering, one of the things we would ask that CEO or let's say COO or whoever it is that's leading the hiring for that position is, we want to know specifically what's the 3 to 5 year vision for the company. What is your leadership style? What's your culture with your organization? Because nowadays, even in leadership positions with organizations, and we're talking to these professionals that are looking to make a move out of their current situation to go to a new one, they want to know how do they align culturally with the leadership? Is the leadership authentic and how they represent their brands. What's the brand reputation? Where's the growth going to be in the organization? What's the 3-year to 5-year game plan? What's the management style of that senior leadership that that person would be reporting to? So there are a lot of questions there that, we have to find out before we would even consider taking on a search. But then you have to go find those individuals that would be, potentially, interested, and we have to, we have to do the due diligence on those individuals, and that is a little bit of a tricky process. It's also, having done well over 350 searches, that my team and I have created some proprietary types of, vetting processes for individuals. But, there's, companies need to be, they need to take their time, and they need to, source individuals for a chief catering officer position. They need to, you just can't necessarily pull somebody off the street, go straight into a chief catering officer position. You're going to have to, peel the onion back layer by layer on this sort of thing.
Yeah. It's interesting, Matt, because I've been watching a lot of leaders in our space for many years. You may or may not know, upwards of 15 years ago, I started doing a lot of workshops and training and talking about catering and restaurants. And, the people that came and listened were always the support people. There was the catering sales managers. And I've been watching that space and that market. And a lot of those people have now become, like, they went from catering sales managers, now they're director of catering level, but and they've grown in their careers, and it's stopped there, like nobody's gone beyond that yet, And so the talent pool, in my opinion, is very deep. And there's a disconnect between the brands themselves have not gotten to a place where they're serious enough about the investment that they need to make in catering. Because the view is, I'm a restaurant and catering is the side hustle. It's not, they talk that it's core to the business and this and that. But I mean, actions speak louder than words. And I think for the most part, most of our industry, certainly in the multi-unit restaurant brands, are underserving the catering space. Okay. It's not sponsored properly. Like typically, CEO says, yeah, catering is a big opportunity. COO goes, yeah, it's a big opportunity. And then it's handed off to a director level catering. It's again, it's a side hustle. It's not core. They're not in the boardroom. They're not in the core strategy meetings. And these are places where these people need to be in order to get their voices heard and to get the resource. I mean, as you know, there's a competition for resources in the context of these brands, right? There's so many different programs, and there's opening new restaurants, and there's construction, and franchising, and there's all these things that are happening. And if you look at their business and you look at franchising, you'll always find someone in the boardroom who's in charge of franchising. You'll always find somebody who's responsible for operations or technology or strategy or marketing. All of the usual buckets get the support. But this catering thing doesn't get the support. And this is more of a question for you, right? So this is like, what can we do, or what can I do, going back to the industry, to the leaders who are leading? These are director level people who are very capable of this next step, or maybe they need to be groomed for the next step, or maybe they need to be there's some sort of intake and onboarding process for them to train them up to that step. So what advice would you give to these people?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, don't we, as all brands, want to future-proof our organization?
Yeah,
and this is a perfect opportunity with catering. We just jotted a couple notes down, and I'll just refer to those. Your catering person, whether they're chief catering officer or director of catering or whatever their title is you have all these brand ambassadors that are in the store greeting the customers when they come in and, whatever. But you got somebody that's outside the four walls as a brand ambassador for your organization, and they need to be part of the, they don't need to be at every board meeting or every senior leadership meeting, but they need to be brought into the fold of that senior leadership so they understand what's going on long term. I talked about it a minute ago. What's the vision for the company? Where are
Yeah.
we? What do we need to do? Where are we on our margins? Are we hitting our goals? Instead of just hearing about it, oh, hey, we need more catering sales, blah, blah, blah. Bring them in. Bring them in. Um, I'm just jotted down an idea. I mean, I've never, maybe there are companies that do this, but you see all these brands out there, and we could, name drop 5 or 10 very easily that are opening new locations left and right.
Hmm.
Okay. And idea just popped into my head. Do a week's worth of events, catering, pop some tents up, make catering in the as you're building I got a restaurant brand down in Florida that's building this huge facility. And I mean, you're using offsite kitchens right now, but they could easily provide catering for, within a 5 or 10 mile radius of their new restaurant. And they'd have
Mhm.
a couple thousand customers before they even open the doors.
So,
It's little stuff like that. You just got to think outside the box, so to speak. But there are so many. I just think senior leadership's leaving huge
hmm.
margins. They're losing opportunity because they are not um, focused on it like I think they should be. I
Yeah.
just, there's a great book out there called um, Who Not How. It's written by a guy named Dan Sullivan and Ben Hardy. And it talks about if you need something done, don't think about, oh my gosh, how am I going to get it done? You say to yourself, you just flip the letters around. Who is going to help me achieve this situation or whatever I'm trying to do? Catering managers, great. You need catering managers and directors and people out selling it. But you need somebody who is going to be that point
Yep.
person who
Yeah.
is a representation of everything,
Yeah.
and they need to
Totally.
be
And
involved at all levels. Yeah.
absolutely, Mike. And also, it's you're tapping into all the departments. If you're leading catering, you need to access everybody. You need marketing, you need sales, you need ops, you need technology, you need everybody, right? So
You're front and back of the house. I mean,
totally,
short of, your VP of operations is running all of it in most cases, but they have their finger on the pulse for catering.
totally,
But
totally,
you're catering, that manager or director is making that VP of ops look great from a margin standpoint, and probably shoring things up on occasion when
totally.
everything else isn't so great.
Totally. And there's so much to consider, as you know. I mean, catering is a big word, Mike. It's like, what is catering to the brand? I mean, there's drop-off catering, there's set up and retrieve catering, there's event catering. These are all different channels. There's private dining. If your restaurant is inclined that way, is private dining, is that catering? Is it not catering? I mean, to me, it's like,
Mhm.
ultimately, these are all channels. These are all opportunities to sell experiences, right? And putting it into the right bucket is really important, and the person who is leading that charge at the C level is a very, very important resource because they are essentially driving the vision. They're keeping the North Star, and they're setting the expectations. Everything from quality, execution, experience. I mean, it all falls under that individual, which has to dovetail into the overall strategy. So, the fact that it's separate to me is always a mystery. I just don't understand. And I think a lot of it is ego driven. A lot of it is just like nobody wants to make room for yet another C-level member. For whatever reason. I mean, everybody's worried about their jobs. I mean, I can't really explain it, to be honest. But it's just like, as I watch the market, and I have concerns for restaurants. I mean, like, restaurants are tough right now. Like, this is a
Mhm.
tough time to be in the restaurant business. I mean, commodities, interest rates, labor is impossible. Automation is coming very rapidly. Competition is really tough. Real estate is difficult. Construction costs are through the roof. Like, why would anyone want to open a restaurant? It's beyond me. And then the other thing that really is sort of, to me, is alarming, and most restaurateurs I speak to, their heads down, they're too busy to even see this stuff. But what's happening in the convenience store business and what's happening in grocery is of great importance to restaurants.
Mm-hmm.
And, most restaurants, they think we're competing with other restaurants. And it's not the case, like I'm telling you, like 7-Eleven, Wawa, Loves, all of these C-store chains, the food service programs that they are developing and launching are amazing. Okay. And they are in the restaurant business. And what's really, really interesting about it is when it comes to catering or the off-prem business, they're doing it out of commissaries, which, by the way, is a far more efficient manufacturing and fulfillment process. Okay. And so restaurants are battling this like super fragmented environment, especially in a franchise system where, franchisees have their restaurant, they've got their real estate, they've got their market, they're doing everything out of that location. It was never designed for catering. They're literally, busy catering day, front doors are locked, all the food's prepared, and it's on all the food is on the tables. It's like there's no refrigeration. Like it's not designed for it. Okay. And so even more so, this is why restaurants really need to pay attention to what's happening and why catering in the years forward is going to be so critical to their survival. Okay. Because it's really all about selling more services into your communities. Now, as a franchisee, okay, if I have a restaurant, then in a sense I have C-level representation because I'm a franchisee, right? So franchisees do it all themselves, right? They don't have the scale and budget. What we're talking about is at the brand level. What we're talking about is being able to support your franchise system, okay, so that they can maximize the opportunity. And that's where the argument is getting made for an executive in the C-suite that is fighting for that channel.
I think it can be definitely added to the franchise or, but as a franchisee, if you are resourceful and open to being innovative, you can. It's a catering is a. I mean, I'm not saying it's easy, and I'm not. Don't take this the wrong way, but it is a distribution channel, and there. I'm just thinking about all these franchises that are around where I live, and they are missing out. I mean, there's a fire department right down the road. There's a satellite police department. There are healthcare satellite offices all over the place, full of thousands and thousands of cars, and they all go somewhere at lunch, right? They all go somewhere. And if they knew that, Jersey Mike's or, whatever it is, Chick-fil-A does it all the time. So does Starbucks.
Hmm.
So there are, you just have to be creative in your thought process on it. And I agree with everything you're saying. And it's just there are, and I will say that there have been some conversations I've had with very senior level CEO, chairmen of organizations at some of these conferences, and there's some rumbling out there of reshaping the organizational chart because there's a lot of extra in that C level that in some situations maybe needs to be pared down a little bit, which would leave room for chief catering officer or somebody to come up. But again, if they opened more channels of distribution for their product, that could be fairly quickly realized as a decent ROI for that person. But it's an interesting thought process.
Well, let's put it out there. Let's advertise this. We're looking for chief catering officers. Are you that? Let's build our roster. Let's get it in front of the brands. They're all looking at us sideways, going, "What are you guys talking about? Like, what do you mean, chief catering officer? Like, what are you guys talking?" And I think like the education process is severe there. Like, it's going to take some more time. But as soon as the first one does it and then the second one does it, it's going to be like dominoes. Like, it's going to be amazing. And I think the results are going to be just nothing short of phenomenal, like in terms of like the real impact that's going to get made. where catering is now core to the business. It's going to represent 33 to 50% of sales. Okay.
Mm.
And when that happens, I mean, think about the unit economics. I mean, it's exceptional. Like we already know that catering is the 13th month. We know that. Like, we already know that catering is leveraging existing assets. We're getting more sales on top of fixed assets. I mean, it's just like everywhere you turn, there's such a strong argument for doing it. And then the other piece is like the people. Um, Many of them are lacking support, and so what I see happening in a lot of brands is you've got a director of catering level or director of off-prem. That person is in charge of the program,
Hmm.
and they have the organization reports into them. So whether it's catering sales managers, call center people, all the suppliers that are providing catering support. Um, but what happens is there's like this sort of satellite team, if you will, that works in catering, typically outbound. There's some inbound, like they're
Hmm.
taking, like it's the ordering and all that stuff. But when it comes to the operations, that's where it all gets mucked up because the person in charge of catering doesn't own that. It's typically owned by somebody else inside. And
Well,
so,
that's the rub.
that is,
They don't own it. They don't own it. And
yeah,
because they don't own it, they're not going to give it. I mean, they're going to give it 100% in most cases, but they don't have ownership. They're not empowered to
they're
have
not.
ownership in it.
Yeah, yeah.
That's the rub. I mean, so if senior leadership would empower
Hmm.
a catering director or manager to execute, give them a specific budget, give them P&Ls, give them, what they would give somebody else in their leadership cabinet. I mean, if they don't want to call them a chief catering officer right now, call them, but give them their own
Right.
P&L to own that whole thing
Hmm.
with some incentive. Maybe that's where we start, and
Maybe.
eventually there's that opportunity. But you reminded me of some friends of mine here locally that I would say, and I've had a lot of conversation with them. They own a restaurant in Greensboro, um, does extremely well. I would say at least 30 to 40% of their revenue is from catering.
Hmm.
They have a larger kitchen to accommodate all the catering they do. Their dining room is very small. The seating capacity is not huge. They do an absolute marvelous job at catering, and they've been very successful. But it's they built or they built their restaurant operations to accommodate that catering focus.
Hmm.
And I think out of pure popularity, they ended up opening a dining room for their lunch crowd predominantly.
Hmm.
But they don't do dinner. They do catering. They don't they open for lunch only,
Yeah.
4 days a week, and the rest is catering. I mean, you can't survive as a restaurant brand if you're only serving lunch, right? 4 days a week. 'Cause they do so much catering.
Yeah.
So there are companies that have been very successful with that, but
Yeah. For sure.
it's interesting.
Yeah, but it sits in pockets though, Mike. It's not the norm.
Hmm.
It's like there's pockets of success. And that's what always surprises me, like Teriyaki Madness, good brand, great brand. And I'm watching them and I'm going like, 99% of the system, catering, not so much. And then you got 1%, where there's a franchisee cranking it, like I'm just
Hmm.
going like over the top. I mean, Max, we all know Max, he's amazing. Him and his wife, they're hands-on catering, 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 catering.
Hmm.
And, I was talking to him at the restaurant catering workshop. We were having a chat. And he's telling me, Earl, I don't understand the franchisees. Like none of them are doing catering, but we're killing it. We're like, if not for catering, we're out of business here. Like we are
Hmm.
cranking numbers, okay, and we're making money. But yet
Hmm.
the franchisor doesn't give him the time of day to really get in there and go, okay, what's Max doing and why and everybody else should be doing this. And it's all the little things. It's everything from attending the workshops. It's everything to being part of Cater Linked as an example. He's got some of his people on his team that he's training, and he's highly engaged, at sort of at the investment level of his particular location,
Mm-hmm.
and he's getting results. And so, the formula is there, the data is actually there, the information is there, but yet there's this mental block, that just sort of lives. It's in the C-suite. It really is. It's just like they just don't. Either they don't understand it, or they're so busy with their other stuff that they just can't get to it.
I think it's an afterthought. It's like, oh, hey, what are we doing in catering this month? It's not a focus.
Yeah.
I don't think.
Yeah. Well,
it's
yeah.
an extra
Yeah.
that they do.
Right. Yeah. So, this is the evolution. This is the evolution. And I look at brands,
Mm-hmm.
like I look at, if I look at Panera Bread, I look at them, great brand. I mean, been through a lot of challenges through the
Mm-hmm.
years. But catering is very strong for them. And I'm talking with the operators there, and I'm having chats, and they're going, Earl, we're sitting, well, we have some pockets that are doing really well. We have some that are not. On average, we're running like 13, 14% across the system, which by all means across chains is pretty damn good, but I'm going like, okay, 13, 14, like, why aren't you guys at 33? Like, what's the problem here? And they're going, well, what do you recommend? And I'm going, well, how about you change the name to Panera Bread and Catering Company? And they look at me like, what? Change the brand? Like, I'm going, yeah, change the brand. And those are the kind of leaps where, nobody has the courage yet, to make that kind of, leap in not only in the marketing of it, the positioning of it, but the support and recruiting and investment of it. Um, I'm thinking back on my own journey, a lot of big brands I worked with where, some of the biggest chicken brands in the world. I spent time in the boardroom, working with them. They called me in to, help them with their catering programs. And, we're sitting in meetings, and there's, typical sort of corporate environment, there's 15 people,
Mm-hmm.
and, you've been there. And, CEO opens the door, hey, what are you guys doing in there? Oh, catering. Catering is $1 billion business for us. Keep going, and leave, and I'm going like, $1 billion business, like, shouldn't you be in the room? Where are
Mm-hmm.
you going to get $1 billion lift? You tell me. A new drink? I mean, yeah, but that's one drink at a time. It's like we're talking like average orders of 350. We're talking like a whole new channel, a whole new way to service your community, a whole new way for franchisees to get back inside and get excited. We're talking about making more money, right? These are
But I think, catering needs to be. I really, and maybe it's somebody that's not in it that needs, like me. I'm not in it full time like you guys are, but I think about all these ways to infuse opportunities for specific brands to provide other I join forces with other brands to, like, do a combination catering. I'm reminded of a conversation I had with a brand that does donuts, and and then I was talking to another brand that only bakes bread and does sandwiches and things like that. And the owner of that location that made bread and sandwiches said, "Oh yeah, our clients are always asking us about can we do donuts?" And you should say yes, I can. Whatever you want, I can do, and then go to another service provider and join forces, because I've always followed the rule of, if you have good synergy with other people, 1+1 can equal 3 or 5 or 52. Uh, but there are other ways to execute at those levels, and make available to your client. What do ask questions? I mean, I know we sell chicken, but would you ever like anything else besides chicken? And they say, yeah, we'd love donuts. Yeah, you guys probably don't make donuts, but can you cater donuts? And it just, I don't, you just got to think about it differently. And as we talked about a little while ago, it's a distribution channel for
Mm.
you to expand on your business substantially. And I say 33% could be low. I like your idea of closer to 50% of your revenue could come from, but you have to think about it differently. And you
Totally.
have to bring somebody in that's going to be given the, empowered to execute at the level that you want, and to
Totally.
create those opportunities for margin. So it's interesting.
Totally. Totally. Yeah. So getting back to recruiting, Mike. So we talked about like
Yeah.
this idea of recruiting with purpose. We talked about that a little bit.
Yep.
Screening for attitude, cultural fit, that kind of thing.
Hmm.
Let's talk about retention. Can we do that for a minute? Like,
Great.
so,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Retention.
So
Talk
tell,
about that
tell,
all the time.
tell us what
Yeah.
you
What
know.
do you want
So
to know?
I want to know, like, so you go through this whole effort, you make this big investment, you make this great hire. Like, how do you make sure you keep these people?
God, it all comes down to the due diligence that there's so many, I'll give away a couple of my secret sauces, but
Mhm.
it comes down to due diligence with a candidate. And because they are upright and breathing and, speak the language you seek, doesn't mean they're going to execute on, or fit in your culture and that sort of thing. So, I'm reminded of a couple key components of finding people that and fit with an organization. And the biggest challenge that I believe companies have when they're trying to make a hiring decision is they don't allow themselves enough time to make that hiring decision.
Mm.
Now, catering is a different animal. And if you can have people in your stable that are completely vetted out, or you've done all the due diligence and you know how they fit, you know what their specialties are, and you can kind of build that pod of individuals that you can reach out to at any given time, that's really helpful. But if you don't, how do you hire as quickly as possible without sacrificing quality, and
Mhm.
do it in such a way that somebody's going to be able to come in and execute? And what you have to do is you have to take what would normally be a 2-week process and compress it into maybe 2 or 3 hours at the
Mm.
most for hiring purposes. So there's some things that I can recommend to your audience of this podcast. And one of them is, we are in the people business. You should
Mm.
be recruiting everybody you run into. You have great customer experience at the grocery store. You get your car washed. There's a great experience there. You I was on an airplane a couple of years ago and sat next to this guy. And next thing I know, he was one of my top candidates for one of my clients, and we were just
Mm.
having a random conversation. Everybody, and my wife gives me a hard time because I talk to everybody because I'm constantly recruiting, and people in our industry and the restaurant and hospitality industry should be constantly recruiting. And every single time you talk to somebody, you ask them, hey, I don't know if you know anyone that'd be interested in making a move. Do you know anyone that is a high performer that I should
Mm.
have a conversation with? And get that person's name. And if you can get their contact information, great. And if you can't, contact somebody like me and I'll find their contact information. That's what we do. Okay. You need to start building
Mm.
a database of people in your area that you can reach out to at any given time. Okay. Number two, people need to, if they want to do it quickly, ideally, there are different types of interview processes, but people need to do behavioral interviewing questions, which is, tell me about a time when you executed on X, and get them to talk about that stuff. But we've started doing something, and I've recommended this to my clients, and it literally it's called it's called a white paper interview. And you literally put a on a larger piece of paper, obviously, but you put a question in there specifically to the role, and you give it to them in person, and you say, I'll be back in 10 minutes. Tell me everything you can about this position how you achieve what you're, give them some specific requirements that they need to answer. I'll be back in 10 minutes. I've had clients come back and the paper's blank because the person is put on the spot and the resume is,
Yep.
fabricated, and it's, they can't execute. That's one way to do it. The other thing is that there's, and I'm happy to talk to anybody who wants to talk about it. I've been certified in a multiple of different types of assessments. There's an assessment protocol that's validated for hiring. There's only 2 assessments on the planet validated for hiring. One takes 5 hours and costs $5,000. The other one takes about 10 minutes and is, $100, whatever. They're both validated for hiring, and it's a great tool. We use it on every single hire or person that we're evaluating. I've got a team that executes on this for me, and it eliminates all of that gut hiring decision process. It eliminates it. So if somebody comes in and says, sure, I'm a self-starter, I have a great work ethic, I can think outside the box and execute and just, tell me what you need and I can go. And they tell you that because that's what they understand you need to fill, right? Because they're always going to tell you what they think you want to hear them talk about. And we give them this little assessment tool, and it tells us, okay, yeah, that person's absolutely telling you exactly how they operate. That's great. And if they don't, then, nice knowing you, we'll keep you in mind for another client down the road. But that's a great tool because here's the deal. I see this all the time. I've seen this thousands of times. People can fake it for 90 days. And in the United States, people are like, oh man, you got 90 days. And after that, you're good to go. Right. Because people can fake it for 90 days, my company does an automatic 120. Our replacement guarantee is 120 days. And we can do that because we do our due diligence and we have our tools we use. But people can fake it to 90 days and then they come in at day 95, 97, 100. And they're like, Erle's been great. Up until last week, he was late 3 times. I asked him to do his project and he totally forgot about it, and, whatever. Right. And all of a sudden people are like, where's the Erle that we knew 90 days ago? Well, Erle's all the way. He can't fake it anymore. So now he's behaving like he normally behaves. And people are like, okay, at 120, they realize they got to fire you because you're not performing or executing or, maybe 6 months or whatever. It's a waste of time. It's a huge waste of money, and it sets companies back.
Yep.
So to improve retention, you got to slow down to speed up.
Right.
You have to do that. And you just can't go with who you fall in love with out of the gate.
Right.
It's just, it's a process.
Yeah. Well, there you go. Good advice, Mike. So Mike, tell us, where can people find you if they want to reach out and, get your support?
Yeah. I'm happy to have I have hundreds of conversations every month with people. You mentioned in the beginning of the podcast that you mentioned creative compensation. That is a term I coined about 1.5 years ago because we have a delta. People want top talent, elite talent, but their comp is down here. So we have this delta in there. How do we manage that? Because everybody wants to hire elite talent, but they don't have the money. And I can teach companies a lot of tricks, and they're not tricks, but they're ways to
ideas.
Cut the delta down quite a bit. But the best way to reach me is to call me directly at 336-404-4610. You can text me, you can call me, you can also reach out to me directly at my email, which is mike@AscentSelect.com, and it's AS as in Sarah, CENT select.com. Happy to have a conversation.
Great. Well, we're going to hopefully, maybe we'll send some people your way, Mike. That would be awesome.
Yep.
Just before we wrap up today, I want to thank you very much for the time you've taken. I
Sure.
think we touched on some great
Thank you.
ideas. Can we just shift to fitness for a moment, just because I know you
Sure.
meant you mentioned to me that
Sure.
you're back in the gym and you're doing some stuff. Like
hmm
what's up? What's going on?
one of the best things I've done in the last number of years is I just completely quit drinking. I mean, nothing. I'm 60 days.
Nice.
I spent 2 weeks in Europe at all these special events for this huge award gala that I went to with my wife,
Hmm.
and then I was back in the States, but traveling, and then I went to some conferences, and all these events had free bars basically, right? And I learned that uh, well, when you spend 2 weeks in Ireland, everything Guinness and all the great beers are all the zeros are on tap. So that was super helpful, but it helped me get through the first few weeks of trying to figure all that out. Fitness wise for me is it's always been a journey. I've always really strive to be in absolutely the best shape that I can possibly be. It's harder and harder. I'm a few years younger than you. We talked about that.
Hmm.
And, you know, it, there's no reason that we should all be, sitting around doing nothing when we get into our 60s and 70s and even
Hmm.
80s. If we're fortunate to live, you ought to be able to execute at a high level, but you have to proactively,
Hmm.
stretch and exercise and do that sort of thing. So I've been hitting it. I've always done it, but I'm putting a bigger focus on it now, just
Great.
specifically. And to your point, lots of protein. I mean, absolute tons, super heavy weight. I dispel the myth that, you know, everyone's like, oh my God, I don't want to lift heavy. I don't want to get bulky. Let me tell you what, it takes years to get
Years.
bulky and massive amounts of food. If you want to get bulky, eat as a dude, eat 4 or 5,000 calories a day. You're literally going to eat like every 2 hours. You're going to eat like 2 to 300 grams of protein. You're going to drink a gallon or 2 gallons of water to wash it all out and get it through your system, and you can get bulky. But for the average
Yeah.
dude or woman out there that wants to just stay in shape, you got to lift a little heavy, got to eat, decent protein to carb ratio and that sort of thing. You know that, and
Mhm.
you can, but it takes time. You
It
know
takes
that
time.
too. It doesn't just
Yeah.
disappear in 2 or 3 weeks. It takes a concerted effort for months.
Yeah.
I mean, multiple months, but
Yeah.
you feel better, you operate better. I mean, just the mental sharpness that I've had just by getting more sleep, 8 hours a night, 7 to 8 hours a night, and just not consuming alcohol at all has been
Hey,
absolutely amazing. So yeah,
amazing. Well,
it's
I'm proud of
awesome.
you, Mike. Good job.
Well, we need to go work out one of these days. Just
Yeah. Well,
get the
we've
weight.
yeah. Well, I've had my own journey certainly, but I agree with you. I mean, consistency is everything. So, and that's hard for a lot of people who are traveling and still working, and it takes a lot of discipline. I mean, for me, it's no different than dental flossing or brushing your teeth. I mean, it is what it is, and it's non-negotiable. Like from my perspective, maybe we'll inspire some others on this podcast who might
I'll
reach out.
throw this out there. There are 168 hours in a week,
Yeah,
right? If you work 60,
yeah,
you still have 108 hours to eat, hang
yeah,
out, go and hang
yeah,
out with your friends, do whatever you
yeah,
want to do. We're talking get up at nobody has a board meeting or a conference call at 6
yeah.
a.m. Get up
Mm-hmm.
at 6, work out for an hour, maybe a little longer as you work up to an hour and a half. You're done by 7:30 in the morning. Get some coffee, have some water, eat some breakfast, and you're in the office by 8. You can start a little earlier, be in the office at 8. You can still put in your 14-hour day if you want to,
Totally.
and go to bed and rinse and repeat every day, 5 days a week, 6 days a
Yeah,
week. I take every
yeah,
Sunday off. I don't do anything on
yeah,
Sundays at all.
yeah. Yeah.
Except eat my proteins and stuff. But
Yeah.
there's no excuse. I mean, you can do that's 5 hours of exercise a week. You take Saturday and Sunday,
Yeah.
and
For
that
sure.
would add years to your longevity and overall health and well-being. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, I just don't think there's any excuse.
Especially
I am
for
tired this week. I've been getting up at 5:30. This started this week, 5:30.
Go to bed earlier, Mike. Come on, man.
I did. I'm working on it. I was in bed at 10 last night. I'll be in bed by 9:30 tonight.
Yeah, 9:30. 9:30 is good. I mean, we're sounding old, but it's not even about that. It's really just about self-care and you got a limited amount of life energy. I find for me, like if I'm having a good week, I'm eating well, I'm sleeping, I'm exercising well, I actually have more energy. So I feel better,
And
have better energy. Yeah, lots of water.
This clear liquid is
Yeah.
really important.
Yeah, big time. Well, we'll do it on the next podcast.
Yeah, great. Good.
Anyways, Mike, listen, I want
Thank you, Erle.
let you get back to your day. What an honor. Thank you for spending time with us.
And that's the match. For the fight for off-premises greatness never stops. So tune in next week for more Catering Cage action. When our challenger steps into the ring, new contender, fresh strategy, same no holds barred arena. We'll see you back in the Catering Cage.